Welcome back to Denver, Gridiron and Hoops. I'm David McDougall, and joining me today is my co-host, Vinny McDougall. Let's get to it.
I'm fresh off smashing a Little Debbie Cosmic Crisp, or what is it called? Star Crunch, not Cosmic Crisp, Star Crunch milkshake. And I'm not talking the little cartons you buy for like $7. We stay on a budget in this house. I'm talking we had some vanilla ice cream, couple Star Crunches left over, throw it all in one, make it happen. And to be honest, don't do it. It just ended up like a milkshake with some Rice Krispies. So just save your time. Don't do it. But hey, I enjoyed it thoroughly. I'm ready for some GH talk though for tonight.
For some reason, that gave me the vibes of the common, they call it the prisoner meal, where you take a ramen noodle and smash it up and then throw the seasoning in there and eat it like it's chips.
Desperate times call for desperate measures, and I'm not paying for those little pints that are like $7. I'm not gonna do it. Okay, I'll
Hey,
make
I
my
understand.
own Little Debbie ice cream. All right.
Right, and I agree to that. So, Vinny, something that I was thinking about today. So, my daughter is in love with Woody right now, Toy Story. And, the way my brain works is association. And I started thinking about good old Chad Kelly back when
Mm.
he went to that Halloween party with Von Miller and ended up leaving a little bit early, a little bit inebriated, and he ended up on someone's couch. And really my main question is, do you think when that person, just put yourself in their shoes where, you're sleeping, it's probably what, 2 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden you hear a huge bang and you just realize that someone's in your house. You go downstairs and you're freaking out, and all of a sudden you see Woody sitting there. Do you think he said, "You've got a friend in me"?
I mean, I guess it depends on what catchphrase to use, right? If you said like, "There's a snake in my
Yup,
boots,"
that's where I was going to next.
I would have been like, "Hey, man, chill out, go ahead and turn on around." But if he would have came in and said like, "It's Buzz, Buzz, get it," I'd have been like, "Yo, he's going down. All
Yeah.
right, like you
You
ain't
know,
messing with me."
the worst part is I mean, I don't know how big he is, but he's probably what, 6'3", maybe 220 or something like that. It'd be an intimidating presence, especially dressed as Woody. You don't know what kind of frame of mind this man is in.
Yeah, NFL athletes are definitely not tiny human beings, so he had to have been just ultra tanked though at
Oh
that
yeah,
point.
dude,
I
like completely. And
couldn't even walk.
it's funny because like when I was thinking of that, I was also thinking of back when Malik Beasley got into like a fight in like a hotel lobby, and
Hmm.
like shortly after he was out of town. But it's just funny, those kind of off the field things that a lot of times they squash it, but in Malik Beasley's case, it was literally on video.
Yeah, this must have been pre Larsa Pippen days then, right?
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I figured we're gonna get into some Denver Broncos action today. Really, just the whole meat and potatoes of this episode is gonna be a Denver Broncos breakdown. First off, we have the news that KJ Dobbins was in town and he's leaving town without a deal. They actually went to dinner, had him in the facility the next day, but yet still coming up empty-handed. Me personally, I was bummed out because I think the guy's got some talent despite a lot of injury history, and I'm not discounting that. I do think that he's got a significant injury history, but with a career average of over 5 yards a carry, I do think that there was some potential there. I think that you, if I recall correctly, you're a Nick Chubb fan. If we can't get Dobbins, is that the play?
Yeah, Dobbins. I mean, it's so funny. We're talking about the exact same type of player. Both, when healthy, very productive running backs, but both extremely injury prone. And I mean, and both the injuries go back to college. Dobbins at Ohio State, couldn't stay healthy. That's why he, dropped a little bit. He was still, high for running back. And same thing with Chubb, just prone to injury history. And obviously, we bring in the rookie. I think we talked about before just that need for a consistent running game is going to be extremely important for Bo Nix. And if we, pay a hefty price on one of these two running backs that are injury prone, I think that might be a price that's worth it, knowing that we have that rookie contract and have already spent There's no doubt. We've spent some cash, but there's still some, on the table, unlike our Nugget squad. So why not take that gamble? And it is a gamble for either of them. And maybe they play the long game, right? They see if one of these other teams are just, going to overpay either or both of them and say, hey, it just wasn't in the cards. It's not worth it. And then if they play the long game and it works in their favor, where Dobbins then has to come back to us, come back crawling for a deal, that puts us in a position of power to get those same type of players, just not having to overpay and, let these other teams potentially overpay. I've heard like things like the Bears, Commanders, if they overpay, they overpay. Maybe we'll come back in a position of strength.
Yeah, to be honest and frank, I would take 10 games of 80% of Dobbins and 80% of Chubb over 16 games of Jaleel McLaughlin, Tyler Beatty, um, Watson. I mean, that's just really how I feel about it. I think we should get a veteran in the room. I think it not only are they gonna, more than likely have a little bit more chops in terms of blocking than some of those other guys I mentioned, but also just more than anything, we got a second round rookie. Let's try to teach him some decent habits from some guys that have done it for a bit, and like especially in Chubb's favor. I'm sure he's not looking forward to being like, an on-field coach type of guy, but if we can at least get someone in that room to help out these other young guys. I know running back most of the times it's just either you can hit the lane or you can't. But I want to swing for it because this running back room was so bad last year with our leading rusher averaging 30 yards a game. You don't just run that back.
Yeah, they both. The other thing to your point is just about being that veteran mentor presence. They both have a skill set and a mindset to overcome multiple injuries like that. You don't see many guys get as injured as often as the two of them have, significant injuries, and just fight their way back and still want to play the game. It shows you that they both love football because, I mean, like, look at Chubb's last injury, and this is after multiple torn ACLs, just a gruesome leg injury, still comes back and wants more. So I think, to your point, they would definitely help set the tone in that running back room versus what we have right now, which is a bunch of young guys.
Yeah, which kind of leads me to think about RJ Harvey. We're talking about running backs. Might as well bring the guy in. The clips I've seen of him are pretty impressive. Most importantly, the guy seems like he's stacked. It's funny because there's people that go to his practices and see him practicing and they're like, man, his quads are the size of like both of our heads. So like he's got a little bit of Saquon to him in that regard.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to see how it translates to the field. There's super athletes that it just doesn't quite translate.
Yeah, very
And
true.
but more and more as of late, right? Like you see a guy like DK Metcalf where it's like, yep, it translated and then some. Obviously, Saquon was just so dynamic. I mean, we're talking, I think he was number 1 or number 2 overall, which, was clearly the right move a decade later or whatever it is now. So yeah, hopefully that, weight room strength and just freak athlete, comes across on the field. That's obviously why they drafted him, for that potential, and we all wanted to show, that's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't equate RJ Harvey to a generational talent like Saquon. I was just more or less, jesting about his crazy quads. He in general, RJ is never going to compare to any of those people because he's a second rounder, like unless of course he comes onto the scene and blows things up. But still, generational talents. I mean, he'd really have to succeed for that because, I mean, like, for example, Travis Hunter in this most recent draft, more than likely it seems like he's going to trend in that generational player type of role, for lack of a better term. But that being said, thinking back to last season in general, I want to kind of break it down position group by position group and see what your thoughts on. Let's go ahead and give them grades. So running back, since we were on it, let's go ahead and grade them. What grade would you give them this last year?
C, maybe not C minus, not a C plus. They didn't lose us games. They didn't win us games, per se. At least from what I watched. Nothing over the top. So yeah, I'd say just kind of middle of the pack.
Yeah, you're more generous than me. I'm gonna go D because I think not only did they negatively impact the offense, I think we only had like 3 runs over 20 yards.
Mhm.
And Pro Football Focus by all means, like it's one of those things where it's like, kind of take it face value type of thing. But they did grade the run blocking from the offensive line pretty dang high, which typically means that they reviewed tape and the way the play was supposed to be blocked, it was. So that makes it a little disappointing that that could happen, and then also no one could break a tackle. It was like as soon as they got touched, they just turned into folding onto the ground, a folding chair just falling down. So yeah, I'm D minus there to tell you the truth. I
Mhm.
try not to go F, but that's just where I'm at.
Part of why you're clamoring for that some new talent.
Yeah.
Like, gotta get it in.
Yeah, to switch to our next probably I'm just gonna say it the way it is. It's a whole tight end. What was your thoughts on the tight end room?
Yeah, I don't even wanna talk about the past with them. Um, I wanna focus on the future,
That is a good one.
and I'm excited to see what Ingram does.
Yep.
You know, Peyton has a long history. Like, I don't even remember, he used to have, like, Shockey way back in the day, and he got some juice. There was some juice left in the squeeze from him, and then obviously Jimmy Graham. That one kind of hard to give him any type of comparison, and then able to use Taysom Hill in just different ways, not just receiving. So I was taking a look because I was just curious. Ingram stats over his career, and hit 100 catches and flirted with 100 catches a few times. Right. And in an offense where Peyton uses that position clearly throughout his career as an integral part of his offense. Um, who care? Out with the old, in with the new. Uh, talk about our fantasy fans right now. First off,
Right.
nobody cares about your fantasy team, so let me just start there. But if you're looking for a sleeper tight end, maybe you didn't get one early on. You want to sit back, sit tight. I'm definitely going to target him, and I'm telling this to my brother, who's also probably going to be in one or two of the fantasy leagues I'm in. So
Right.
you don't know. Maybe I'm playing coy, overselling him to see if you'll pull him early. But no, I'm just playing. I think he's going to make a big impact. Imagine if you could get 80 catches out of a tight end. Like, talk about something we haven't seen in Denver in a long time. Julius Thomas, probably the last time we've seen a tight end even flirt with that kind of production.
And at that time, everyone wanted to complain about him not blocking. Like,
Yeah.
I could care less. When you're catching 12 touchdowns in a year, line out wide. Don't even bother touching one of those defensive linemen. I don't want
Mhm.
your hands getting hurt.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go ahead and throw a grade on the tight ends from last year. I'm sticking around that D territory. I'm gonna give it a D plus because although I mean the way everything was set up, I honestly didn't see him targeted a whole lot. When they were targeted, I did like it wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
By all means, none of them can break a tackle. I mean, it's same as the running back room. But that being said, I'm on the same page with you with Evan Ingram. He's one of those guys where we have to kind of hope that he's going to be healthy. I do think that he's looking for that career resurgence, and he is
Mhm.
an actual weapon. Like he's a little bit smaller as far as tight ends go, if I remember right. I think he's like 6'2", maybe something like that. So he's not crazy big, but he's mad athletic.
Mhm.
And that's awesome to see. The only thing I'm curious about, and like you mentioned, fantasy and stuff like that, so just overall production in general, is if he is going to be targeted enough. I didn't see a lot of effort from Bo Nix to include the tight ends in the passing game. But, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, well, that's because of the roster. That's because of the guys that were on the roster that were capable of playing in that role. Uh, they just weren't comparable to an Evan Ingram. So hopefully he realizes that he is going to be his security blanket and he utilizes that this year.
A lot of it is game plan. And again, just look at Peyton's historical trends with tight ends. He's going to find unique ways to get him involved in the game. I don't know if he'll, allow him to run the ball or anything like that. I forget the play. Who was the tight end we did a jet sweep with? Anyways, that's in the past as well. But I am curious to see, how he designs plays to get Ingram involved. Is it a red zone threat? Is it, in between the 20s? But you're going to see a lot of Ingram this year. That's my prediction, and I think that'll be a good thing for the Broncos.
I'm also curious, just since we're on the tight end conversation, how many tight ends they plan on keeping on the roster. Because, like, I know he loves Troutman. Sean Payton wise, he loves Troutman. So I think Troutman's sticking around. Lucas Kroll, Nate Atkins, those guys, I think one of those guys are on the bubble to, kind of keep an eye out for them in training camp. And as preseason goes along, one of those guys might get the axe. Gonna go ahead and move it along. We've already kind of covered quarterback kind of in the opening and everything like that in the original episode. So I'm going to go ahead and switch it up and go to O-line. What are your overall impressions as a former O-lineman?
I played a little high school football, okay? Actually, technically one year of Division II college
Yeah,
football,
yeah.
okay, before I flopped out. First off, I'm going to give Garrett Bowles half credit for completely proving me wrong throughout his career. When we first drafted this dude, I was like, oh my goodness, what are we thinking? Like 25-year-old or however old he
Oh,
was when we
I was
first got
beside
him.
myself.
And we had, Ramczyk, and I forget the other O linemen, who both are still productive O linemen, by the way. So that ended up being a pretty darn good, draft class for O linemen. Um, Continued to just prove me wrong. So I gotta give the man credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
Overall, I'd say this is where we can start getting into a little more of the positives. I'd say that, B to B plus is territory. It didn't look like it did with Wilson, where he's running around like a chicken with his head cut off. And that could be because of the decision making, could be because of the release time, could be because he's stretching the ball down the field, could be because he had that ability to run. So I mean, I like what I'm seeing. And I hope as the weapons, as we've seen this year, the weapons build up around that offense, it takes even more pressure off that O line to produce.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I'm gonna put him at a B, and the only reason being would be actually be depth. So like I actually like our tackle depth, and I can't for the life of me remember the guy that stepped in and played tackle uh when our tackles were out, but he did a really good job. And then just more than anything, it's like the inside depth. When the backup center came in, there was just a lot of struggles in general. So yeah, I think I'm going to stick with that ranking. But onto the gravy, onto the money positions. What do you think about wide receiver?
Oh my goodness. This is tough. I mean, obviously Nick's overall still had a pretty darn productive year at the quarterback position, so you have to give some love to your wideouts. But then there was so many times where it was just like, man, you know, we cannot get an explosive play out of these darn receiving core. So I mean, I'd go similar to the O line, I guess, and this could be my homerism coming out, but I'd say a B for the wideouts. That might be a little generous, but then I also, like I said, you have to look at Nick's numbers, and they weren't that bad. He had to be throwing the ball, as much as he did. Was it 3,500 yards?
Yeah, it's right around there. 3,700.
See, yeah.
Yeah, he had 29 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. So yeah, definitely. I would say at least productive passing offense for.
I don't know. What about you? What are you giving him?
I think I'm going to come in with a C plus, and I'll give my reasoning here. Mainly timing. The guys, they never made the right plays in the right times. There'd be drives where we need this 3rd and 5, and it bounces off of their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And we just need a little bit of that clutch gene where when the time comes, you make the play at the right point in time. Because like, I mean, you catching that 5-yard pass on 2nd and 10 to make it 3rd and 5, but then dropping the next one to convert the first down really kills a drive. I expect a lot more out of Cortland Sutton. I know everyone's like, "Oh, we got 10 touchdowns." Like, yeah, but he had the thousand yards, and that's they were pushing for him to get that in the final game of the season to the point where they were feeding him 17-game season now. Like 1,000 yards isn't what it once was. Jerry Judy just put up like what 1,200 yards. Like, here's my thing: is Judy can't catch. If he's putting up 1,200 yards because we gave him 300 yards in a single game, I expect Cortland Sutton to put up 1,200. Like, it's just we need that from you, and we need bare minimum 10 touchdowns. You got 8, you like, he had some amazing catches too. I don't wanna, like, discount
Man.
him too much because he had some amazing catches in the end zone. It's just consistency, like the Jamal Murray type thing, we need it consistently. We don't need you to just shine in certain times. And that, I mean, that's just my overall take. I think that the group really suffered when Josh Reynolds decided to, get in a shootout or whatever the heck happened there. Where I don't know if you heard that story, but they were like chasing him down the highway, shooting at him and stuff like that.
I didn't. Mm-mm.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he was one of those late night escapades at a place he shouldn't have been. But that being said, I think that probably distracted the locker room in general. And really, Troy Franklin can create separation, can't always execute on catching the dang ball. So
Right.
hopefully in year 2, we're going to see some turnaround there. To kind of throw in the off-season part of things, we added in Pat Bryant. Guy has a 4.6 speed, which is like shockingly slow for a wide receiver. Between him, Devon Vele, and Cortland Sutton, we've got a slow group, if you get what I mean. I really like Devon Vele though. Like I'm like him to the point to where I'm like, why aren't you feeding him more? This guy catches everything, like everything, and that's my type of wide receiver.
So you said what, C minus running back room, D minus tight end room, D plus.
Now,
Man,
now keep in mind this was the previous season,
I
so
know. No, I'm just saying it kind of shows you, the potential that the offense has to grow because we have to, if we want to do anything, we have to beat the Chiefs. Like you have to be able to be the best team in your division to make any noise come playoff time. And it's not that we need some high powered offense. Obviously, the defense is going to help us out significantly, which I'm sure our grades are going to be a little higher there on the defensive side here in a moment. But you have to have the ability to score the ball. And the free agent pickups, the draft, there's a lot to be excited for. And I'm sure Bo is got a big smile on his face too. He's got to avoid that sophomore slump, and Peyton's going to help him do that. And these players we brought in are going to help him do that too.
and that was one of the exciting things is despite the dysfunction, I think in the red zone, they did execute pretty well. Like at least I should say historically from what we've been seeing in the past decade or so, however long we've been suffering. That is the bright side, but yeah, like you said, it's the potential to grow. A lot of these guys are really young,
Mhm.
so they just need to kind of grow into their own. And maybe my grades reflect that I maybe overinflate Bo Nix's value in my mind. Yeah, I'll admit to it. I mean, I'm not perfect, Vinny.
They were a playoff team, right?
Yeah,
I get what you're saying. It's modern NFL, 17 games. You can't you know be like, wow, we have this elite player because they got 1,000 yards in the modern NFL. It's just not. It's not
yeah.
the case. But he does have elite level talent. Sutton, like I said, I'm very excited about Ingram, and we'll see what this young running back room or whoever we bring in, because what's going to happen is people are going to get injured, and then that's when these guys are going to get picked up. Right now they're probably strategically waiting so they don't have to be in these camps. Do you really need Chubb or do you really need Dobbins in any of these camps? Like running back is the most plug and play position in football. Like
Yeah.
here, run left, run right, block left, block right, go out for a pass. And that's what you need your running back to know. Pretty straightforward. So, lot of potential for growth, like you said. Do they realize their potential? It's really going to be up to Bo to get them to that over the next level.
Yeah, to bounce back to the receivers for just a quick moment, I would really love this upcoming season to see a package that has Evan Ingram at tight end, Devon Vele, and Cortland Sutton on the outside. Just throw in another big body where like the whole field is just 6 foot 3 plus, just to see how that would play out.
Some 21 personnel right
Yeah,
there.
just get the big bodies in there and
Yes.
see if we can throw some jump balls.
If you continue down this path, you're gonna turn into John Gruden before you know it. We see some spider two wide banana. Uh, like I'm gonna have to quit doing podcasts with you if I ever hear you say Spider 2 Y banana. Okay.
It reminds me of the Giants back when like they had Plaxico Burress and Amari Toomer,
Yeah.
and they just had size for days. I think they had Jeremy Shockey at that point, if I
Yeah.
remember
Uh-huh.
right.
Mhm.
They just had size for days, man. All right, well, let's go ahead and transition over to the defense. Let's go ahead and start off with the defensive line. What are your takes there?
Yeah. I mean, hard to not grade. Ooh, this is tough because I want to teeter towards that A range, but I can't do that. I just can't. I, I'd have to go B plus. Obviously potential, you know, defensive player of the year campaigns inside and on the edge. But when you start talking about A tier defensive lines, they're not there yet. We'll see if they can sustain what they've been putting up. But when I think of A tier, I'm starting to think of like elite, like maybe I'm going too old school, but just D lines that you were just completely afraid to play against. And so I can see how some teams, have trouble game planning, but you also got to look at the outside, help the inside. So Sertan obviously helping, put people on an island helps your D line a lot better. So I'd go B plus.
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with that because I was teetering A minus. The so there's positives and negatives I'm going to bring up. The negatives are there were times where we couldn't stop the run. And like you were saying, a defensive line, you're not running against them, at least not consistently.
Mhm.
You might get the breakouts where it's like a blown assignment, turns into a 30-40 yard play. But yeah, there was just times where it was just we were bleeding and we couldn't stop the bleeding. But the reason why I teetered on A minus was because I personally didn't see Nick Benito putting up 13 sacks. I personally didn't see I think it was Cooper with 10, and we ended up, ended up with 63, I believe it was 63 or 62 or 63 sacks as a team. And I think a large part of it was because of the defensive line creating that easy path for the linebackers to kind of clean things up, if you get what I mean. I think Zach Allen was tremendous. Like even the rotational players, on Franklin Myers and some of those other backups and things like that, like people that would rotate in. There was Malcolm Roach who was doing well and stuff like that. But just in general, I trusted our entire rotation. It wasn't like I'd see someone in there and be like, "Oh, that guy's in there."
Mhm.
It just wasn't one of those cases.
Yeah, and you nailed it. The run game, like that second half against the Bills, was hard to watch. It was just very hard to watch, and it was the D line that just couldn't stout up. I forget what was the nickname for the not the Orange Crush, but what they were trying to call this defense, something Crush. Uh,
Oh, I don't know if I heard it.
I'll look it up after you start chatting on this next question. But they're like the Big K Crush right now. Like the King Supers brands. Uh,
Right?
not, not quite. The
It's just labeled orange soda.
exactly. That's where we're at. And you tell me right now on a hot summer day, if somebody had an orange soda in front of you, something ladle orange soda and some, some fresh ice, you would not drink that. I would. You
Right?
would.
Right?
That's
Hey,
kind of where they're at right now. They're not quite Orange Crush yet. I would love for them to get there.
hey, kind of like you mentioned earlier, I'm no stranger to saving a penny or two. So I'll go ahead and swing it into linebackers. I'll throw the grade first. Um, it's as far as linebackers go, I think I'm actually going to set them at just like kind of a solid. Actually, I'm going to go B minus, and the reason being is we ended up with the injury to Singleton, and that ended up kind of hampering things. I honestly liked Sternad. When he came in, I thought that he had some decent plays. He reminds me of what would be like kind of a pass rushing linebacker instead of a kind of stand up coverage linebacker, and which I know that's kind of odd, like the only one that I can think of that's kind of like that is Micah Parsons, but definitely not that level, not saying that. But in general, like Benito and Cooper, they did very well. Like I mean, we can't ask for more than what they produced. And DeAndre Tillman, I think he started off as like a practice squad player. I can't remember the gist of him. I'm pretty sure he's undrafted. The guy just impressed me every single time I watched him. Like it was like kind of like when I was mentioning how the D lineman, when I saw the backups in, I was like, oh, nice. And he was one of those players when I saw him on the field, I was like, he's gonna make something happen.
For sure, for sure. I finally found out what that was. There's some people that called him the anonymous crush. 'Cause, just a bunch of guys, you're like, "Who are these
That
guys?" Like,
is
"Who
funny.
is Benito?" But, he's out here killing it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I would have to agree with your assessment there because you have to look at this as a unit as well, and what is the phrase, "The rising tide raises all ships." That's kinda where they're at right now, and obviously with the draft, I know we're about probably talk about secondary here. If you got guys that can get after the passer and you got guys in that secondary that could hold on for 3, 4, 5 seconds, you're gonna have a productive defense, and that's what we saw last year.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. Some of the guys they drafted seem to be kind of edge rusher type players, whether it be hand in the ground or standing. But obviously, they were later round picks. Probably, I would assume developmental guys. But
Mhm.
that was interesting and worth noting. Nick Benito has the best nickname other than PS2, probably on the team with Casa Bonito. It's just too good.
It's perfect. The real question is, like, does he have a sponsorship yet? And if not, Trey and Matt, what are y'all doing? Give the man a
Yeah.
sponsorship because you say you're, Denver through and through. You bought the restaurant, you renovated it. You gotta love the Broncos. Give the man some sponsorship.
Yeah, we're gonna have to call you guys out on that. So we know you're avid listeners to Denver Gridiron and Hoops, and just do what's right by the man. I mean, that's all we ask.
Just have him cave dive if you need to, whatever it is, even if it's not on site, because I know that's not a thing as much. Um, or is it? Is
Oh, it
there?
is. Yeah, they still do it. Yeah.
Dude, bust out a cave dive, have him come up, plug in a Broncos, slogan, and give the man a couple hundred K. It's not that hard.
Yeah, in the new Casa Bonito that's ran by them, they have Mad Bear Pig roaming around. And then there's plenty of South Park memorabilia. So
Exactly. So throw up some
it's
Broncos
pretty good
gear.
stuff. Heck yeah. So on to the probably the prize jewel of everything, which is the secondary. What is your grade on that?
Yeah, again, to go to that A territory, even A minus is hard for me because it feels a little top heavy. And then I'm thinking of like back in the day, like how does this group compare to like the no fly zone? So, man, this is tough. This one's tough. This should be the layup of the group, but for me personally, I'm like, I guess I'll say it A minus.
See, I set you up on that one because my grade's not there.
Okay.
My grade's a B, and it all came down to injury.
Hmm.
Uh, so we ended up playing with backup safety and backup corner quite a few times. Uh, when Riley Moss went down, the team really, really suffered. And when he came back, he wasn't the same. I honestly think he shouldn't have rushed back because
Hmm.
it you could tell he wasn't the same. And I'm wondering if it kind of affected his recovery in general. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully that's not the reason they decided to draft Ade Baron and they just kind of don't think he's going to make it back. And he's one of those players that unfortunately over the course of his career has been injury prone.
Hmm.
But let me tell you this, if I'm taking out their injuries, like the games where those players were injured, I'm giving it an A.
Hmm.
I think they were elite in those games. It's just if we're looking at the picture holistically, I do have to kind of ding it on that because when it came down to the games, you know, you can only deal with who you got if you get what I mean.
Yep.
And when those guys went down, unfortunately, the product suffered.
Let's man up. Yeah, and that's what I was saying. That it's a little top heavy, and hopefully our rook can balance that out. And like you said, injuries can help balance it out. But still, a great unit, one of the better units across the league, and we'll see how they develop moving into next year.
I did like McMillan a lot, and I'm curious what his role is going to be now that Barron's in, like how they're going to balance that all out. Sean Payton was talking to the press today, and he mentioned that he sees Jade Barron specifically as inside and outside corner,
Hmm.
because they asked him if he planned on kind of moving him to safety at all and trying any looks there, and that's when he stated that he sees him as inside and outside corner. So I really do think that he's going to be with what Sean Payton's favorite term is Joker. He's going to be a Joker of the defense, where he's kind of move around and kind of create uncertainty for the other offense is my assumption, because probably going to see him in a linebacker spot and be like, what is going on here? Because I do think he has that flexibility coming out of Texas. So yeah, and I mean, why not? Let's go into special teams, Vinny. What do you think of
Oh
the
my
kickers and
goodness.
punter?
Much like
I'm kidding. That's not football.
as
No, I'm
much,
just kidding.
no, much like when it comes to my fantasy football draft, I I,
Last round.
I don't even care. No.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
either.
I guess I don't even know how old Let's is at this point. But just don't miss. It seems though like the kickers are just so much better than they've ever been before.
Yeah.
Once upon a time it was like, okay, you got like Justin Tucker and like a few others. Now it's like every single kicker 55-yarder, not a problem.
Right. That is a good point.
So if for whatever reason he's not getting the job done, we can easily find guys out there, because the kicking game has changed drastically. And I don't know when that shift happened, but you watch these games now, and what used to be, do we go for it on 4th and 9? Because it's a 54-yarder. Now it's like send out the field goal team.
Yeah, I don't know if you got a chance to look at the off-season primer I sent, but I have a slide for each rookie, and the slide for the punter, it says, "Who TF cares? He is a punter."
If I wasn't trying to promote our work, as soon as we started talking about kickers and punters, I probably would have just went to bed on this part of the podcast. Okay,
Right. Yeah.
all right, it's time to
Exactly.
shut it off.
uh, the team overall, at least last year, there's obviously room for improvement. We saw the defense as a lot stronger unit than the offense. But that being said, this free agency that we recently encountered was definitely leaning heavy on the defensive side. So it seemed as if we're doing iron strengthens iron on the defensive side, and then on the offensive side, we're like, oh, we'll give you Evan Ingram, and hopefully that Band-Aid fixes everything. But that's not a complaint from me. I thought the offseason free agency wise was pretty awesome.
Mhm.
I am primarily concerned about the injury status of every key player, like literally every key player we signed this offseason, because whether it's Hufanga, who, I mean, they literally have him as a comparison, has his comparison being like Troy Polamalu, which
Mhm.
I know is crazy. I don't think it's, obviously we're going to say diet Troy Polamalu. And then,
King
there's
Supers, big K,
yeah,
big
right,
K, Palomalu.
exactly. Big K. I enjoy that. And then, I mean, from to Greenlaw, who, I mean, when healthy, the guy was an absolute wrecking ball, which makes me think that we're gonna have our best middle linebacker since Al Wilson, and fingers crossed, like super hopeful on that. And then just in general, what's your takes from the free agency?
Yeah, first off, I alluded to it earlier. We spent money first and foremost. And it's a good feeling when you can support a team that spends money. It just is.
Unlike the Rockies.
Unlike the Rockies, who won a series recently. So shout
Hey,
out to the Rockies.
they had an achievement. I gotta give it to them right here. Here's your 5 seconds of fame on here, Rockies. They were able to avoid going 10-50 by winning their 10th game before they got to 50 losses. It's so impressive.
It
I
is.
mean,
It is.
honestly, I feel like they need some applause.
Just a little love for our CR. They should give away rock pile tickets if they aren't. I don't know if they are, but if they're not, they should.
Uh, Dude, there's no reason for them to win games because they sell out games regardless. It's
Yeah.
the weirdest business strategy in America.
The melting pot that is Denver now. they just get baseball fans, not Rockies fans, which is totally
Oh no, it's not baseball fans in there. It's people looking to get inebriated.
that too. Yeah.
They added the party deck, and it is an atmosphere
Yeah,
now.
can't hate them for that. They're making money. So, back to your question, first off, they spent money. Secondly, I think the defensive focus speaks to the fact that they got to figure out a way to stop Mahomes and Kelsey. Like I said, that's the standard. So we're not going to outscore that group. So what do we need to do? We need to keep building up the defense. And then what do we pay Peyton for? To work his magic on offense, regardless of who's back there. So to me, it kind of fits the strategy and the mold and the culture of what they're building, which is that old hitman style defense. Back, I forget what they call Bounty Gate defense. And then, building around letting Peyton work his magic on the offensive side. But you're right, the injury piece, I mean, that's why they're free agents. They're not free agents because of their level of play when healthy, that's for sure. Because if they're healthy for 17, not one of the players we signed would be a free agent. They're free agents because of their health. We'll see what our strength and conditioning staff can pull out. If they can, right, if they can keep these guys healthy, that defense is going to get much better.
Yeah, the good sign about Dre Greenlaw is San Fran actually flew out to him after he agreed to terms with the Broncos, trying to sway him back to going to them, and he still chose the Broncos. To me, you don't see a team doing that if they're not hopeful that the person's going to recover from the injury status. So that right there is pretty solid. And to kind of circle back to your point you made about building up the defense to try to compete with these teams, when we saw the Chiefs lose in the Super Bowl, it was abundantly clear that Patrick Mahomes was disturbed with the defensive plan that the Eagles had put in front of them. And that being said, I think that you're dead on with the approach. Now, obviously, I'm going to list some greats here, so give me a break. Some second-year rookie contract quarterbacks that have won some Super Bowls off the top of my head. Russell Wilson, which, that experience. There was Big Ben, and I believe Tom Brady, right? I think he won in his second year. But the thing that all three of those quarterbacks had in common, besides the fact that they went on to be great, is they were coupled with amazing defenses in their second year, and that's the way they were able to win championships.
Yeah, they're able to, the flexibility of the roster not being inhibited by a massive quarterback contract allows them to go out and spend money on these other positions. And that's exactly the window they're in. We have possibly, so this year and possibly next year, because as soon as you get to that fourth year, you got to pay the quarterback. Because they have the fifth year option or whatever, right, as first round draft picks. But you see the deals start to come around that fourth year. So
yeah, especially if they're elite, you don't want to get to that point.
right.
And more than anything, it's just showing the guy that you actually support him,
And we don't have the Bengals, needing to pay wideouts along with the quarterback.
And that's also another reason to just really, unfortunately, just look back at that Russell Wilson contract, because we're still in that dead cap. I don't have the figures in front of me, but I think it's like 35 million. So imagine what an additional 35 million would do to this roster. And this group will pay it. I think we both are in agreement that our ownership group is amazing for the Denver Broncos.
I think you shared something just like the net worth or whatever, owner over owner, and the Broncos, net worth is just like crazy money, where
Astronomical.
where it's not even close. And we all said it from the beginning. I mean, we went from an owner who loved the city, loved the team, but had mental or not had a disease, right? To a long period of transition where couldn't keep it in the family, relying on the trust or multiple people to try and run this massive organization. They did win a Super Bowl during that time, so can't hate on them too much. But even in that same period, we didn't even have naming rights for the stadium set up.
Yeah.
Like what in it like this isn't MLS, this isn't Major League Soccer where they're like, we got to find a sponsor. Like this is the National Football League, and we didn't even have a name on the stadium because Sports Authority wasn't even they were bankrupt.
Yeah, that was such an odd time.
To now we're in a spot again where hey, maybe they don't love the city. I don't know if they love the Broncos or not, but they are willing to put out a product that gets that return on investment back. So I love to see it, love the direction they're heading, and keep spending that cash. I'm cool with it.
I don't see him stopping because you just at least around Denver, you just keep hearing more and more about their new stadium plans. I
Hmm.
think they want to go along one of those stadium plans that's going to be like almost like a mini city where it's got everything. There's rumors around here that it's going to be in Greenwood Village or somewhere like that. There's also rumors that it's going to be out near the airport. But I definitely think that's the direction they're going to lean, which
Well,
is
and
going to be interesting.
it'll be really easy to win the vote of the taxpayers
Oh no, they're
when
funding it. They're
full.
funding it
Okay,
themselves. Yeah.
so
They
wow,
don't want anyone else's hands in their pockets.
gotcha. Okay, so
Yeah, so it's that type of money, Vinny.
that's next level Jerry Jones type cash, right?
Right, exactly.
Hmm.
Yes, but yeah, that kind of I think we can bring it to a wrap with that. On the next episode, we're going to be diving into a little bit more Broncos. We're going to be talking about the draft, breaking down some of that stuff, and then also get into some of these recent OTAs and training camp and things of that nature. But in the meantime, I just hope you guys don't have any of those moments where you're sitting on the couch and look up at someone saying, "Who are you?" And then you reply to them saying, "You've got a friend in me." This is
There's a
Denver
snake in
Gridiron
my
and Hoops.
boots.
You guys have a great night.
Later.
Anything's possible. Anything's possible.
In the Mile High City, where the lights shine bright, the Broncos fight hard in the cold, clear night. With every Hail Mary, our hopes take flight, and the Nuggets dribble dreams into the spotlight. 24 seconds, the clock's racing down. Gridiron and hoops, we stand tall. With every dunk and three, we give it our all. In the city of champions, we heed the call. Together as one, we rise, never fall. With a quick crossover and a thunderous slam, the crowd's rolling wild, it's now or never, man. From the court to the field, we stake our claim. Together we'll rise, united in the game. Hit sticks collide, feel the energy surge. One we rise, never fall. So let's lace up tight, let the games begin. And Denver is heart where we all win.